Waiting for the attendees list to pop up. We have about 30 registered. So, and I know that there's a number of people at different practices. So more will be coming on. Good evening, everybody. We are just giving a minute for those who have registered to get started. I know that we have a good number of people who have registered and will be looking at the recording for this, but we're just going to give it another minute. Hello, Mr. Lee. Welcome back to USM in virtual form. And those of you who are watching this evening, as you hop on, please feel free to enter questions into the Q&A, which is located at the bottom of your screen. I'm going to get this started now. On behalf of the Internship and Shadowing Committee and also the Alumni Office here at USM, thank you very, very much for joining one of our career panels, which helps students better understand the careers they have ambitions of joining and what lays ahead and how other people who went through USM's halls, how they got to where they are now. We are very excited this evening to welcome back our panelists to USM on the screen. We have with us this evening Bruce Lee, who graduated from USM in 1981. He is the founder and CEO of Keebeck Wealth Management. He is a wealth advisor with 33 years of investment experience, and he leads with the idea of empowering clients through a transition of being the CEO of their company to becoming a CEO of their capital. Bruce has been named Barron's top 100 financial advisors list every year since 2007, to Barron's top 1,200 financial advisors list in 2015, 16, 17, and 18, and the Financial Times top 400 financial advisors in 2014. Also joining us this evening is Tom Schadewald, USM class of 2010, has a bachelor's in economics from Harvard. Tom is currently a director in the Equity Capital Markets Group at UBS, primarily responsible for helping companies access the public markets through initial public offerings and mergers with SPACs or special purpose acquisition companies. In his career, Tom has raised billions of dollars in the capital markets for corporate clients and participated in hundreds of transactions. He most recently has been heavily involved in the surge in SPAC issuance, having raised over 50 SPAC vehicles since 2020. Prior to UBS, Tom worked at Deutsche Bank after graduating college in a similar capacity and role. And last, we have with us Chandler Sullivan, our newest graduate. She's from the USM class of 2016, is a 2020 UW La Crosse graduate, and has her degrees in psychology with a minor in technical writing. Chandler is currently a financial associate at Ironwood Drive Financial Group here in Milwaukee. It's an independent financial advising firm located downtown, and whose founder, Michael Shepard, has also participated in a past panel. So, panelists, Bruce, if we can start with you, and we'll just work our way through. Could you tell us a little bit about your current role and your day-to-day responsibilities? Okay, Bruce, you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Well, thanks for that kind introduction. I primarily, you introduced me as the CEO of Keebeck Wealth Management. We actually have four business verticals. Which is wealth management. Our other one is our private equity offering, our real estate offering, and then we have a global macro fund out of Stanford. And so, the way we think about things from a comprehensive perspective is we have about 30, 35 professionals spread throughout the country in trying to create what I consider risk-adjusted returns in an environment that is, highly volatile. And so we manage currently around $3 billion, a few $1 billion in the wealth management unit, and $1 billion in the what I consider the rings. And it's kind of trying to, as you said, making the CEO of your company to become the CEO of your capital. I think is something that we try to help clients think about how they transform. From either, an expert in what they do, and then kind of think about how do they diversify and create longevity and sustainable outcomes for the long haul. That's about it in a nutshell.
Tom, how about you?
Yes, thanks everyone for joining. I I work in this job I never knew existed back when I grew up or was in college until the guy who ended up hiring me out of undergrad happened to do this job called equity capital markets at a big global investment bank called Deutsche Bank. And essentially, if you're ever watching TV and you hear about a company like Robinhood IPOing, I'm one of the many people behind the scenes who essentially gets that private company from A to Z, working with the SEC, other financial regulators, as well as other banks to basically take that company public and raise capital for them. So on a day-to-day basis, my responsibilities vary quite widely. I'm usually working on a bunch of different deals at the same time, but you have to kind of stay up with both investor sentiment. So kind of what deals people want to buy. Are there any kind of industry trends that people are focused on or want to see? You have to kind of have a view on kind of how the broader stock market is trading and whether it's a good time to try to bring a company public. So it can vary pretty wildly on a day-to-day basis, but that's kind of the general overview.
Thank you. Chandler, tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am fairly new to the finance industry. As you mentioned, I have a degree in psychology. So in short, I never imagined being in the finance industry when I was an undergraduate, but I love it so far. I'm currently licensed to sell life insurance, but I am an associate in training to become fully licensed as a financial advisor. So right now, being an independent firm, a lot of the other experienced advisors essentially are their own business entities and do whatever services they want to provide for people, whether it be sell life insurance or focus on wealth management or retirement accounts, just as examples. They have the freedom to really do whatever they want for their own production goals. At the moment, I am currently studying for my securities industries exams, so the Series 7 and the Series 66. And once I pass those, I will be fully registered representative, able to buy and sell securities and do more and offer more for clients. I expect once I am fully in that position, I'm going to be doing a lot more work and a lot more outreach and networking. Especially just to build my client base and to do a lot more. Day-to-day activities right now for me include a lot of studying, but a split between business-related items such as doing introductory meetings and doing a lot of joint and shadow meetings with experienced advisors to see how they run their own businesses. A lot of messaging and prospecting, but like I said, my main focus right now is studying and passing my industry exams.
Okay. All right. All of you are in very different trajectories within your careers. So Chandler just starting working on some of those licenses and the different exams that go along with it. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? And then, and Bruce, if you could speak to how some of that licensing and some of that early work done early in the career trajectory, how does that build a strong foundation to get to the point where you are building a larger philosophy with the clients that you serve? I don't know if anyone wants to pitch into that first.
Well, I'm happy to. First of all, it's so encouraging to hear about a new advisor getting engaged, in the process. And, and I'll tie it into kind of a university school setting, okay, just so that the students that are listening in on this, one of the greatest values that I found at university school was the small setting of environment of how the teachers conveyed their messages in what I considered a more intimate setting. And, oddly enough, it really permeated into our business and the kind of the way we think about wealth management and the way we consult with our various clients, from Forbes clients all the way to individuals, that are, kind of in the high net worth arena. And, early in your career, when you're studying for your exams and doing all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking about, okay, how's this really going to translate, in my career? I think draw upon the fact that university school, I think, teaches you a little bit, not just about the math and and the science of it all. But the small classroom, I thought, always engaged me in a little bit more critical thinking. So it's not just memorizing events, it's like, how do you think that through? And I often noticed teachers would kind of force me to think in terms of not just mechanically, which, without indicting other schools, I didn't feel like it was a factory-like process. And so if you can translate that into the field that you're engaged in and what you're doing, I think your success ratio will go through the roof. And so I just wanted to kind of put that out there as far as early career individuals are going. Don't, all the Instagram and all the TikTok will tell you, you've got to be aspired to be great within the next 10 minutes and we're all Mark Zuckerberg. The reality of the matter is that's fine. And I wish I was him, but I'm not. I'm 58, so I'm probably just upset about all that. But the reality of the matter is, if you take an iterative process over a long period of time and then kind of draft behind the experience that you came from this, kind of wonderful high school, and you think about kind of how you go through that process, I think university schools start you at that foundation of helping you start to think about how to become a critical thinker. And I think that really helps navigate you in your early career, especially when you're trying to network, right? So, university school is a very affluent university that teaches integrity and values. And if you think about that, that really aligns with a lot of the things that we do in business. And, if you don't have integrity, if you don't have critical thinking, I don't care how smart you are, you're going to be left out of the room. And I think university school helps you with those qualitative aspects.
Thank you. Tom, you're a little bit behind Bruce in your own career trajectory. Can you talk a little bit about the networking piece and how that has played out for you? You talked about a friend of yours with a job that you didn't even know existed and how he helped bring you along. And then Chandler, I'd like to hear how you found your way from psychology into finance.
Yeah, so I think when you're an undergrad in college, you really, at least for me, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a lot of friends since I went to school on the East Coast who were moving to New York and getting into finance. So it was kind of one of the things a lot of people around me were doing. I would say to some of the younger people who are just getting started in this, you'll learn pretty quickly in your career that it's worth taking the time to do some initial networking and some due diligence on whatever career path you want to do. So you'll find folks like the three of us on the phone who are more than willing to help out someone whose shoes we've been into years ago in terms of just explaining what we do on a day-to-day basis, what your life would actually look like, what the career trajectory really is, just giving good, honest kind of feedback so you can make an informed opinion. And so I kind of went through an iterative process on that to kind of come to the ultimate conclusion kind of where I wanted to start my career. And then ultimately ended up being something that turned out and worked out well. I think the thing that's really kept me in the job for so long is really just the other people who do the same job that I do. There's probably like, I don't know, a couple hundred of us across the world. They, personality wise and kind of just how I operate on a day-to-day basis, it's just like a good personality fit for me. And so I'd say another thing, whether the subject matter seems interesting at first or not, you should really try to figure out whether just like from a personality point of view of how you like do your day-to-day work or how you work with other people is a good fit for the job you're taking. Because I find people who end up staying in any given career, it usually ends up being more so they like the people they work with and it just works with them personally more so than the career itself a lot of times.
Chandler, how about you? How have you found the networking aspect of things, and how did you get from psychology into finance? And was that also part of that networking, small, intimate space of bringing you on board?
Yeah, I definitely would say networking is a huge part of this industry, but also just a huge part of life. Networking can really make or break sometimes a career you want to get into, or just having the door being open to you. For psychology, I entered college not knowing what I wanted to do. At 18, I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to pursue as a career. So initially I was undecided, but I had thought I wanted to do biology. I quickly learned that that was not something I wanted to do. And I declared psychology because I found out that I really wanted to help people, whether that was going to be in a clinical counseling sense or a different career field. So being a graduate within the pandemic was extremely hard. Jobs were short to come by, and if they were open, they were mostly online. And that was great for the time being. And what I did prior to this was mostly heavily within the technical writing field. But I knew from then that's not something I wanted to continue pursuing. So when I looked for a career change, that's when I really reached out to my network, and a lot of people that I had met through USM. I met Michael Shepard, who was a coach at USM at one point, and I interviewed with him, and I thought the job sounded exactly what I was looking for as a career change, and kind of aligned with what my personal interests were at the moment. So from there, I was just very inspired by the leadership and also the people here. So it really spoke to, I would say, the same thing as I really enjoy the people that are here, that are around me, even if the work is very tedious, especially studying for these exams right now. But I knew that with my psychology background, that if I just stayed dedicated with in mind that I'm going to be in a career that helps people with their day-to-day lives and can help them with their financial goals, then that's something that really makes me feel fulfilled. And it kind of spoke to me that, you know, just because you have a degree in one thing doesn't mean you can end up pursuing what you really want to do, or something that makes you want to get up and go to work every day.
The finance industry, it's very, very broad. Just the work that all three of you are doing is quite different from one another. But are there any particular essential skills? Bruce, you talked about the critical thinking aspect of things, being comfortable talking with others. Tom, clearly you're doing a lot of self-reflective work on that iterative process and constantly gauging and assessing, suggesting a very strong, logical, detailed mind. And that helping, Chandler, when you talked about helping others and using your psychology degree to really understand that there's a lot of empathy that goes into what you do, trying to understand the clients that you're helping. Are there other particular skills that, regardless of what area of finance you go into, that you believe are essential?
Something that I struggled with, which I think is my generation grew up with the cell phone, I guess, starting in like 5th or 6th grade, we started texting. I think when you enter the real world, you don't know exactly how important it is to be good at talking on the phone, especially when you come from my generation or younger. So that was an early obstacle. It's funny, but the more you practice talking on the phone, the likely better you'll be at your job, especially in finance. I think you have to be very kind of well-spoken, but you also have to be able to do it just verbally, and many times even just over the phone. Zoom's kind of changed that a little bit. People can read your facial expressions, but there's still a lot of, you talk on the phone way more than you'd ever think in today's world.
Yeah, Tom, I would really support that. You know, if you can wordsmith and, you know, create an opportunity for clients where they can kind of visualize the picture, since we sell or produce or present cerebral topics, you know what I mean? And you have to be able to put that in what I call monetizing your intuition through your words, right? Crafting the right argument, especially in your job, which I want to talk to you offline. I'm actually in charge of a fintech business that we're talking to UBS, and I think you're the right guy we're supposed to talk to. So, you know, at some point I'd like to, you know, connect with you. I couldn't agree with you more. And since it's, for lack of better words, there's a competitive nature, I think that would be a fair statement. The meritocracy is you're competing against some pretty high-end athletes out there, and the difference between you winning a deal and being, you know, and you know, not participating can all be based upon how that individual feels about you and your ability to articulate not only what you do, but they feel that they're going to be treated fairly. And sometimes it almost comes down to that, you know, and I don't mean to sound like after all the education that we all went through and did all the accolades that we went through, but not being able to communicate that smoothly and quickly can cost you a lot of money in a transaction. And if you enjoy that type of, you know, that fight, so to speak, of which I do, I like being in the ring or, you know, competing, it can be very fulfilling. So I couldn't agree with you more. The communication aspect is a completely or over communicate, you know, is completely something that I think that needs to continue to be discussed. And then Chandler, you know, I mean, the concept of, you know, more importantly, of you being in psychology and thinking about the human mind, I think you're in the perfect position because, you know, the ability to read, you know, the tea leaves or the hand that's been dealt to you and be able to then navigate through that maze will make you infinitely successful, in my opinion. I mean, it's all psychology to a certain degree.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate that. That's huge because, you know, I'm still working on my own motivation within this career, but I would say personally, I also agree with how communication is very crucial in this industry. But personally for myself, I'm continuing to work on this kind of headspace that being comfortable with failure is crucial for me and for other people in this industry because as Bruce said, it's very competitive and you're going to win a lot of days and you're not going to win a lot of days. And hearing, no, I don't want to do business with you is not an end all be all. And it doesn't mean you just give up. It just means you bounce back and figure out what can I do better next time? How do I market better next time? How do I compete at the same level next time? And it's not necessarily something personal to do with you. It may just be someone was a better fit for them at the time, or they see business going elsewhere with someone else. So I know being young and being younger, failure is like this huge, scary word, but it isn't something that you should fear because to be successful, you have to just continue trying until you succeed and have that kind of grit and motivation to continue until you get to that point.
And I think what you're saying, Chandler, is very inspiring to some of the younger students who might be listening in this. So that self-effacing attitude, I think, is just, it's inspiring. You know, so first of all, thanks for having the courage to say something like that. You know, my daughter, who, you know, was trying to get a job and she was going through similar struggles as yourself, you know, she says, well, I failed here, you know, and I said, well, you forgot one important word. She goes, what's that? I go, you forgot the word yet, you know, meaning I haven't gotten there yet. And so when you put that last word in there, it's the last flag of hope. And, you know, if you think about what, you know, Tom and I, and we all do, think about it, we go for an interview every day. And so if failure wasn't the process, then what's the point of the lottery? You know what I mean? And so the reason why we're in it is that, you know, when you do succeed and you're good at it, and again, I thought, you know, Tom was very self-effacing as well, just saying, hey, I didn't know what I wanted to do, should be very encouraging to the students of university school that this kind of pre-program, this is who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do is, you know, is, I'm not gonna say it's hogwash, but, you know, there's a certain, you got to kind of feel your path and then kind of go from there. So, I mean, I think these were all, you know, valuable discussions.
Very much what you make of it, whatever your experience may be, yeah, and how different your degree opportunities are and what it is that you're seeking. But I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about what are the things that you did in college? What were some of the experiences that you had that were particularly helpful for you as you made your way into this career and through some of its harder hurdles? What was helpful to you?
I think something, at least from my experience, that USM also helped out with, and then Harvard too, was that my reading and writing skills were just so much above and beyond most of the people kind of entering the workforce at the same time, and being able to articulate a message very clearly over email or verbally is of critical importance. and you don't, when you send the email, you don't really get a redo or something, right? And so I think for me, like, I think like whether you're good at math or whatever, or you're going to do a super analytical job, like, don't forget that at some point you're going to have to present those results. And so I think just keeping in mind that reading and writing is ultimately how we communicate with everyone. It's worth spending a lot of time on that as you go through your education, because that's all I do now. I read and write for 12 hours a day or whatever and talk.
I'll just say a couple things. I think one thing is being first generation Korean and my parents not having a lot of money, being exposed to the university school culture with a coat and tie. I know that sounds kind of silly. I wasn't used to it. I didn't even know what a button-down shirt was, to be candid with you. Went to TJ Maxx to get my shirts so I could assimilate. I think acceptance and, you know, this sense of community gave me the confidence, especially when you're talking to alumni of university school who come from, you know, these super wealthy families, and you're sitting there going, I can't even relate. You know, kind of gave me the confidence to go to college and then be able to socialize at another level without, you know, having the insecurities of, and these are my being a minority. It was somewhat intimidating, and university school really helped me with that. And then going to a big school like Wisconsin, Madison, the socialization of that combined with the small school setting really gave me a ton of confidence. And so the ability then to communicate properly and with confidence, and, you know, the reading and writing also, you know, gets translated in that. But, you know, I think that was massively accretive for me. Taught me, I guess in a nice way, I didn't feel like I was invited. I felt like I belonged in the room. And it was, I can't explain it. It's just it's an inner feeling that I have inside.
If I can dig into that a little bit, and I'd love to hear from Tom and Chandler on this as well, that move from the small environment of USM to the large environment of Madison, I mean, that's a huge thing. Tom, you talked before about all the time that you spend on the phone, being comfortable talking on the phone. You know, we see so often, you know, like that students are, and like we all are, you know, with our face in our phones. And it's easy to hide behind our technology and not necessarily make some of those personal connections and learn that confidence. What are some of the things that you did in college to become comfortable with making those kinds of connections, introducing yourself, talking to people who might be making that very significant jump across like multiple socioeconomic levels or big cultural chasms?
I think, I mean, it's something that you do your entire career, probably the day you die, but finding really good mentors that are a few years older, 10 years, whatever it is, finding people who've kind of been there and can offer some like real world experience, and whatever you happen to be striving towards is tremendously helpful. And so like I still work for the person who originally hired me out of undergrad. They've been a tremendous mentor for me. He's like 30 years older than me, but like he's always willing to just give me an honest opinion. So if you can find good mentors early on, I think it can be super important as you kind of start to build your career, especially initially. How
did you do that in college?
It's a lot of it's just networking. So I ended up playing rugby for the last 3 years of school. And so I knew a bunch of older people. I just graduated. I was lucky that I'm the younger sibling too. So you can use your older sibling and kind of their friend group. But it's really just putting the tentacles out there and not being afraid to just be the first person to say hello. I think I at least was very surprised by just how responsive people are when you ask them for their help. I think at the end of the day, it's like we're all working all day long. So having a conversation where we could help someone else is actually a pretty fulfilling part of our day ultimately. So I guess like just don't be scared to reach out. And I guess like people are always willing to provide more introductions, but it's really just kind of working your way up the ladder a little bit and then getting lucky sometimes.
how about you? What are some of the things that you did at UW La Crosse to make your way into the fold? And even as you jumped into an entirely new career field, what have you been doing to build some of those inroads?
Yeah, I'll repeat, networking is really important. And I joined, I think I was in 3 clubs when I was at UWL, and that really helped me to come out of my shell, but also make some common connections. But at the same time, I learned that if I'm going to figure out how to get something done or I need help, that I'm going to need to ask for help. And I feel like sometimes people come from a background where they're not used to asking for help, or they see that maybe that's not something that they should do, but it's very beneficial to just reach out to people and say, look, how did you do this? And how did you get to where you are right now? It just opens the door to so many other things. So just being open to ask for help and to ask for more connections, but putting yourself out there on campus and being a part of campus and being a part of all those activities definitely helped me meet a lot of people that I still talk to today. I also remember just keeping some of my high school connections at reach too, especially within this career. You don't know who you're going to talk to that might introduce you to someone else. So I would say that's the biggest probably factor that has helped me so far, at least to find mentors and find people that will come in and meet with me or give me advice or just resources on what I need to do to be a better advisor overall. So.
Great. That's excellent practical advice for students as they're looking forward to college, and even the way that they can better maximize their time here at USM. For those who are looking at potentially taking some summer jobs, looking at some of our summer internship and shadowing opportunities, are there any tips that you have about interviewing, workplace etiquette, things that students can be doing as they start making those initial forays into the workplace?
I like to tell people whenever I'm giving them career advice, similar to what Chandler said earlier, but like I applied to 100 jobs, I got 40 interviews, and I finally got 1 job, right? And so the whole game to getting internship or job or whatever, there is an element of law of large numbers. So I'd say just don't be don't take it as a negative if whatever the one thing you thought was going to work out doesn't work out. Like apply it to like a bunch of stuff, because ultimately maybe you didn't get the job you wanted, but it was a better job for you too. Like you never know, or you end up talking to someone you wouldn't have otherwise, and they know someone else who has a internship program or something. So I just say like use the law of large numbers to your favor. It usually pans out then.
My advice would be do your homework. So if you're going to go visit somebody and talk to them, take the 10 to 15 minutes, just to read a little something about their firm or the individual, what their likes are, so that you can figure out something to relate to, and so that you might get a little bit more insight. Oftentimes I'll be in an interview process, and it's almost it feels like a tutorial process. Well, walk me through, and then you feel like, well, if you're not doing your homework to visit me, not that, I need that for my ego, how are you going to be when you're representing my organization or you're thinking about the future? So, my suggestion is, read up on the types of people that you're doing it. And then kind of in your own mind, regardless if it's the right answer or wrong answer, have some sort of definitive opinion of where you want to be in your life. As not necessarily like, oh, I want to work here or work here. Aspirationally, kind of like talk about maybe some of the challenges you've had in school or whatever. I've often noticed, the success ratio of individuals that I hire are people who have self-effacing stories who, show me a little bit of vulnerability, and then, try to kind of express that in how they're trying to progress their lives forward, because then it gives me something to work on with them in helping mentoring and tutoring. Just high level thoughts.
In terms of just majors, are there particular majors that you see reflected a lot in your industry? Are there ones that you think are particularly helpful in giving potential candidates a leg up or a strong technical skill that could be beneficial?
I guess my 2 cents on it. I'm an economics major, so it's somewhat of a catch-all if you go to a liberal arts school if you want to do finance. So I mean, if you have the option to get some sort of undergrad business degree, I'd definitely do that if you're interested in finance. The coursework will be more relevant to your day-to-day job. But I'd say like I wouldn't be afraid. Like I have friends who are they were like romantic language majors and stuff. They're in finance and they're all doing just as well as the rest of us. So I wouldn't be afraid to apply to something or overthink your major too much. But I think if I had the option to get the business degree, I probably would have.
There's, could you talk a little bit about interns who are just starting out in your firm? So somebody who's just getting involved in your area right now, what are some of the things that they would be doing? What kind of tasks would they have?
Yeah, I'd say like the best thing you can do as an intern is show up with like a positive attitude. A lot of us have been working for like a long time, and so we look to the younger people coming in to like bring the positive energy. And so I think that's something I definitely could have done a better job on day one. You don't have to. I wouldn't say don't be unprofessional, but like at the same time, if you're too shy and you don't show any of your personality, you can kind of come off as unrelatable. And so I'd say like make sure to go around and meet everyone. I think day-to-day wise, since you don't have any kind of experience doing the job, I'd say like find the next youngest person and kind of like try to shadow them to kind of teach yourself a usable skill. I think if you learn kind of one usable skill when you become an intern a couple of weeks in, then people can kind of just come to you and you become useful to kind of the broader organization more quickly. And so it's really just kind of building your kind of toolkit as quick as possible and kind of just monkey see, monkey do sometimes, just shadowing people.
Yeah, the way we think about our interns, and we've had a couple already from university schools. We want to, educate the kids first. So what we do is we actually have a program, and we call in various partners from private equity, from hedge funds and whatnot, to make presentations to them throughout the day, so that at the end of the day, and then we usually have a dinner scheduled, so it's a little more relaxed setting. And then what we do is we talk them through about how they interrelate into the capital market system, so that hopefully by the time they're done with their tenure or their internship, they feel like they're coming out of it a little smarter, so that it sets them up for their next interview. The second issue is then it's also a test for me for future leadership, because if the individuals seem engaged, those are the type of people I want to hire. If they seem disengaged, you can tell pretty much very quickly if they're getting involved in the material or not. And it's just based on some of the very basic questions they may ask, like in a hedge fund, boy, there's a long short. How does that work? Are you betting on stocks going down? And it's just that kind of innocent intuition. And then where their skill sets then kind of, then we can kind of gauge then moving forward, what projects to put them on. So if, there's an investment committee, talking to various private equity funds that want to, get engaged in our platform, we throw them into the meeting, and then from the senior portfolio manager, have them, help us draw, kind of like an investment thesis over it. And regardless of how sophisticated or unsophisticated, I'm just trying to get them in the habit of understanding what that process means for them. And so that's kind of how we think about internship, as kind of a post-education process, so that when they go to their job or their interview, they can speak with some intimacy as to what they did in their internship. Because I know when I'm looking at potential hires and I said, oh, you were an intern at, Deutsche Bank or Goldman Sachs or where, what did you learn there? And if they can't give me an answer that's beyond, well, I don't really know, I did, the high level, you can kind of smell that. And so if we can give them a few more tidbits, a few more weapons, so that when they go into their job, I think we feel like we help that student along.
Looking ahead to the future, what particular challenges or opportunities do you see in the world of finance? I mean, every industry, everyone has been through quite a lot in the past couple of years, and everyone is looking at the future and with some different ideas of what to expect. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that you foresee? Tom, you talked about that positive
Yeah.
attitude. So
I mean, I think just the whole kind of technology wave continues to kind of take away some of the kind of more mundane jobs. And so my guess is my job will continue to become more and more a kind of people kind of job where you're much more forward facing than kind of the back office stuff or boring stuff, as I like to say. I think something that affects everyone in finance is definitely regulation. So I think there'll be increasingly more and more regulation, especially in a lot of the blockchain and kind of crypto stuff. And I think kind of the trend towards all just the globalization in general, which kind of took a brief U-turn during COVID and lockdown stuff like that. I definitely see that trend continuing to pick up. And so you now not only have to compete with all the US financial institutions, a lot of it's become a lot more global. And it continues to become more and more global as we go here and get more connected on things like Zoom too. And so it's really just all those different things, at least in terms of how I think about the next couple of years, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I concur with that. I think COVID took technology from an evolution to a revolution very quickly. And what's keeping him so busy at his firm is, we're seeing a convergence of, investment, about kind of pre-Ford days when everyone kind of constructed things and someone would go in, construct the portfolio, do all sorts of stuff, is now being handled by financial technology, and it's kind of a race to the bottom, so to speak, from fees and whatnot, disintermediation. I've often said, we can hire a bunch of people or we can hire a digital army. And that's why you're seeing these valuations kind of go through the roof. So for those institutions like ours, and not to put a plug in for our firm, but we're embracing so much financial technology and technology. I feel like we're becoming a kind of a wealth tech firm, for lack of better words. And then we incubate and invest in these particular funds with venture capital. And so the convergence is we're slowly becoming a solutions-based organization, sans the advisor. And then the attraction that we're getting from Wall Street is, as we incubate these deals, we're attracting various VC organizations to say, hey, Bruce, you're a good beta test for what we're doing, which then creates another full cycle of clients wanting to get more engaged because we're getting access to these types of transactions. So the lines are becoming a lot more mewed from investment management to tech, to tech advisory. And the synthesis of those two is creating tremendous volume opportunities, but the disintermediation to the larger boxes is significant. That's just my 2 cents worth.
That's a very 30,000 foot view of what's going on with the industry. Chandler, on the other end, as someone who's making her way into those first levels of it, do you find yourself, is there a lot of technology that you need to learn? Is there a lot that you need to familiarize yourself with? Or do you need to be aware of the arc of how, like AI and so on, how that's operating within the industry?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot to learn with kind of technology taking a very frontward facing, bold statement, especially within finance. You hear a lot nowadays more about the blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs, and that's going to create issues with how, what was mentioned before, with regulations and kind of integration into how does that turn into, is that something that we can even touch, that we can help people with, or how are we going to do asset management with things like that? Because it's a very volatile type of asset right now. So just learning from the more experienced advisors, it's really been an overall, like all of us are learning a lot of new things. And for me being new, it's just making sure that I keep up with the regulations and making sure that I'm filing everything and putting everything into my client tracing kind of management, because you know, the great thing about technology is that there's so much and so much we can do, but staying on top of that organization piece is huge, especially to see trends and everything like that.
Would you recommend to a student who's looking ahead to potentially a career in finance? We offer a couple of computer science classes here, the Comp Sci Principles and Comp Sci A. Are taking computer science classes important, do you think, for anyone who's hoping to make their way into the industry? Would that be beneficial for them?
If you want to automate like the boring part of your jobs, it's definitely beneficial. But I wish I had taken more of it in college. I feel like I should have known better and done more of it. But I think it's definitely something I look for when I look at resumes, just when I hire people, is whether they have any of that experience, because it can just be a net benefit to the entire team.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference in that, you know, to graph behind that comment is the answer is yes, for several reasons, because it's a skill set that, you know, is applicable in almost every field. And so, and also it gives the future employer that this individual, you know, understands process and discipline. And so, you know, kind of sometimes that can be kind of half the battle. I mean, it used to be kind of finance degrees, so on and so forth. Now you're seeing engineers getting involved in our business and developers. And so, you know, as AI, blockchain, NFTs, technology start converging into, you know, kind of the old world, you're seeing this kind of confluence of activity. And so the simple answer is yes and yes. I mean, more is more. Go get it. And then, you know, at worst, you put in your back pocket, which means from a competitive perspective, if you're competing with somebody else and you go, oh, by the way, I also have this experience, I don't see how that hurts you.
Are there, with so much to learn and with those permeable boundaries between finance, engineering, and everything, there's so much more that you need to know all the time, and understanding different relationships and how those are shifting. What are some of the formal ways that you go about continuing to learn your own professional development? Are there organizations that you are a part of? Are there classes that you need to take? Like, talk to us a little bit about how you stay current and on top.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm like the Chris Farley of financial services. I always say, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know he does. You know what I mean? So I just try to hire the most intellectually. I'm trying to be the dumbest. It's very easy for me, by the way, to be the dumbest guy in the room, but I'm really trying to hire people who have very specific skill talents that I know that I cannot think through, that help me arrive at these decisions. So my weaknesses are, if you take a look at all the people that I've hired over the last 4 or 5 years, they're all people that I just know I can't do what they do. And so therefore, that's how that helps me think about it. So often when I'm in meetings, I always say I'm the Chris Farley of the group, because, you know, my knowledge of these areas is very, very low, but my intuition is very, very high. So I try to then populate my team with everyone that I know is more talented than I in this particular area. And then we try to come up with an overall solution.
At my firm, we have weekly meetings, but every 2 weeks, my boss brings in wholesalers or partners that come in that help us with continued education on a variety of things like mutual funds and investment research and retirement funds, etc. So his biggest point to that is you don't have to be an expert in everything. You should definitely figure out what your niche is, but it's giving those resources so that we can call on these people and maybe invite them to come to a meeting with us and have them be the experts and help them out with our knowledge and reliability on that. So I would say, at least at my firm, there's a lot of resources to continue education and learn about the different products that we have at hand with our different wholesalers. And that kind of also speaks to not being afraid to reach out to these wholesalers to come in and help us with, whether it be with our own education or helping with a client in a meeting.
I'd say like the best thing I figured out to do early in my career is like Google like is your friend. Like if you're sitting in a meeting, there's so much jargon, and this is even outside finance. Think when you go to the doctor's office and they tell you what your sickness is, and then they find out you actually just have the flu. There's just so much jargon in every profession. Like early on in your career, just if you don't understand something, make sure to write down whatever you think was said, Google it, try to figure it out first yourself, and then don't be scared to ask someone else what will be a more intelligent question after looking into it yourself first, because that's kind of the quickest way to learn, at least early on, is just literally pay attention and just kind of learn all the terminology and stuff first, because everything else becomes much more simple after that, the higher kind of level concepts.
All right, I do want to give some time to Q&A. We've got just a few minutes left. We did have one question come in. I invite other viewers to type theirs into the Q&A box. The question that an attendee asks are there any of the experiences or opportunities outside of internships that are beneficial to starting a career in finance? And what are the specific skills and talents that you're looking for to hire?
So to answer the first question, between my sophomore and junior year, and so kind of that weird year where you have to somehow get work experience, but no one wants to hire you. This is in college. I went to this thing called like the Dartmouth Bridge program, which is taught by their MBA level business school, but is meant for undergrads. Tuck Business Bridge program, but that you basically do kind of a few different things for like a week a piece that you would normally do, and you get your MBA, so like marketing, accounting, and stuff like that. And so I think that definitely helped me when I ultimately went to go try to get a job. And I know there's a ton of other programs like that. So it's really, I just say, trying to show interest through actually doing something that shows some interest, even if it's not a job specifically.
That's a tough question for me. I don't know necessarily what I look for. If anything, I want to get an individual that I think has a very diverse experience background, so that they can speak upon some of their experiences. And the way I kind of think about that is, you know, the business that we're in is you know, people think it's a science. It's actually more of an art. Markets are very fluid. You know, if you think in terms of a symphony, they have peaks and valleys. There's a volume to the business. And so, you know, technically, you know, I look for the creative side on somebody and how they think about problems and things. And so experience, you know, in the college level, sometimes I look at, you know, for why my eyes are drawn there, I don't know why. And so I don't have a real good answer for it. But, you know, when they travel abroad, I just kind of want to know how they mix with the culture and how they think about things, because, you know, think about it, they're now technically in a foreign country. And so all their synaptical energy is alive. And, you know, it promotes a lot of new questions. Why did you choose this area? Why were you interested? What was your thinking behind it? What were your disappointments? There's a series of, you know, regressive questions that I can ask that kind of give me a deeper dive into that individual's thinking and how they structure problems or solutions at a very young age. And then, you know, I've often found out that just because someone has the best, you know, it's kind of like getting into the draft. If you just think, you know, the best students are coming out, you know, and with, you know, straight A's, I would say, okay, that's the issue. But people sometimes develop differently. And so the individual who can, you know, solve problems or new situations, in my mind, are best suited for this job. Because overnight things can change.
I'm wondering if you all went to USM, you know what our culture is like, you know what life is like in the classroom, you know about the family style dining, the no-cut athletic teams and so on. If you could give yourself, your young high school self, one piece of advice of an opportunity at USM that you could take advantage of here that would better prepare you for the moment that you're in now, what would you suggest that you do at USM?
I don't have a
That's
real
a
good
stumper.
answer.
Yeah.
That's a really tough question.
Do all your summer reading. It makes you a better reader. No cheating. I read every one of those books, and now I can read prospectuses faster.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't really, it was so long ago. I'm 58, so, memory is starting to fade, man. So, of course, I was a perfect student, so it's really hard to even relate to it. I guess, if anything, I never really pursued my teachers as much as I should have when I didn't understand anything. And now that I realize that we had so much one-on-one, I probably should have been better at that. So like in physics and so on and so forth, when I didn't quite understand, the curriculum, the one-on-one really was helpful. And I never really took tremendous advantage of it because all I wanted to do is, goof off after school. So that's something I should have taken a little bit more seriously, because now when you try to pursue an answer with someone who's a real expert, access to that individual is very difficult at times. And so just getting that person's attention can be very difficult.
It's good practice just getting when you're talking to teachers, getting practice, having those conversations with the expert and asking for help. And some of the things that you talked about earlier, seeking that out, and even just getting comfortable, writing those emails, having the face-to-face conversations, maybe not the phone, but at least working on some of those skills. Chandler, is there anything that you would have told yourself to do differently?
I'm trying to think. I would say as a high school student, I was pretty much more of an introvert. So I feel like students who are more introverted, don't be afraid to put yourself in uncomfortable positions, because it'll really lead you to making more friends and making more connections, but also put you in a really good position to be comfortable with whatever you have to do in your career, whether you need to do presentations or you need to talk on the phone. Just being more open to more leadership positions as well, because I often find myself being one of the only women in the meeting. So just feeling like I'm in a good headspace to really kind of represent myself, and getting out of my shell quicker, because I feel like I did that a lot easier in college. But I think in high school, especially at USM, with the community being so small, it's just a lot easier. There's a lot of more one-on-one, and you can just join whatever you want to join. So I would say just take wind at all those opportunities you have.
So that kind of leads to the last question that's been posed in the last minute that we have. In terms of joining the career, do you believe that the connections and relationships, which you've talked about being so central to the functioning of your job, are those connections and relationships necessary to get into the finance career and to grow it?
Rephrase the question. So you're saying, do you feel you need to have these relationships in order to get into finance? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah. Would you say that it's essential, or can it be like a cold call?
Since I cold called my whole life. I didn't come from a wealthy family, and I didn't want to embarrass myself I just didn't want to not embarrass myself. I just didn't want to call upon my alumni for capital. You know what I mean? I wanted to make it on my own. But one thing I learned was university school taught me the process and how to get there and the language that was necessary to get there. So I had the tools. So I don't think you need one contact. You just have to own your knowledge. You have to know what you're doing. You have to own it. You have to have an opinion. And then once you have an opinion, there's enough people out there that will agree or disagree with you. But I don't think you need to have a lot of, I guess it helps, but then the negative to that is then you become overly dependent quickly. And so you don't really know how to go out and actually hunt for it. You know what I mean? You're going to the grocery store and kind of getting it. And I'm not trying to suggest that anyone who comes from university school and has a ton of contacts should look at that I'm looking down on them. That's not my point. The question specifically being asked is, do I have to be connected to go into finance? And the answer in today's environment, it's even more no now than ever because of the way technologies is getting involved. I would say maybe 30 or 40 years ago, that seemed to be more of an issue, but with technology the way it is, you've got a good idea the money's going to be there.
I agree with that. It's more valuable to be good at building connections and relationships than to kind of have them initially. I know people from both ends of the spectrum and equally successful, whether you had them originally or not. It's more about you yourself going out there and building those strong connections and relationships.
Yeah.
All right, I would like to thank all of you, Bruce, Tom, and Chandler. Thank you very, very much for lending your professional wisdom to us and helping give students an idea of what life in the financial world is like and ways that they can join you on your career path. And so students who are watching tomorrow, think of the different ways that you can start taking advantage of the opportunities here at USM and start building some of those relationships and developing those particular skills. Thank you very, very much for joining. I wish you all a wonderful good evening. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.